Rear foot elevated single leg deadlift. One of the biggest mistakes that I used to make all the time and see other people make a lot is having the back foot too high. Make sure when we are doing a rear foot elevated deadlift that you don't start out using a high bench. It's just too high. I did this for a long time. I had a lot of people do it, but I've learned better, so I do better. What I've done is just stack 2 Air X pads on top of one another. You can do whatever works for you, but make sure that you try to use something that is a little lower than an actual bench. So we don't want something that's like at our knee height. It's probably just going to be too high to start with. So you've got 2 options for what your back foot is doing. I find that when I'm up on my toes, it's a little bit more stable for me than if I have the top of the foot down. The top of the foot down tends to be a little bit more challenging in terms of balance. Now, what we want to think about when we're doing this single leg deadlift is we're going to use all of the same cues from our deadlift hinging pattern that we have been working on all along. Your front leg is your working leg. You really shouldn't be feeling much of anything in your back leg. It is just like a kickstand. It is there for balance. So remember, 80% in the front leg, 20% in the back leg. As we are coming into our split squat, we are going to hold our weight with our opposite hand of our working leg. What I like to do in this variation is to open my chest of the side of my working leg. My elbow pit faces forward and I make a fist. This helps me really keep this side nice and open as I'm coming down instead of crunching and rounding forward. So if I have my right leg as my working side, I would grab the kettlebell with my left hand. I'm going to keep the underside of my elbow facing forward on that right side, make a fist, so I'm just irradiating tension. Now I have my left foot on the elevated surface that I'm using. Now from here, make sure that you're not starting where you're trying to go, okay? So don't start bent over. Don't start with your hip already going back. We want to make sure that we start nice and tall, rib cage underneath, rib cage on top of pelvis. Now from here, what's going to happen is you're going to think about that right hip, okay? The right hip is the one that needs to be flexing back. You feel for the middle of your foot, that knee is over the midfoot, and then you're gonna let that right hip open up and come back. The kettlebell is going to just kind of gently rotate sort of in front of your shin, but the thing that is producing movement here is your hip opening up as you're coming back. Then we wanna make sure as we come up, don't come backwards and then come up, okay? So we're thinking about we're coming straight down and then we're pushing straight back up through the motion that we came down. So you're gonna push up, that hip is pushing forward, hip forward, hip forward. The knee isn't coming completely straight, hip forward, glute helps out, and then at the very end, the knee can come straight so you get back to this pelvis underneath rib cage position at the top. Your back knee will always stay bent. We're not coming straight with the back knee. So again, we're gonna be here. We'll let that kettlebell be here. You're gonna come down, knee comes forward a small amount. Hip is gonna open up as you come back. Make sure that you're not hinging from here, okay? So remember that we don't want this aggressive position. Coming down here. This is opening up. And then I'm gonna stand up, hip forward, hip forward, hip forward, hip forward, hip forward, hip forward, hip forward. And then at the very end, I can straighten my knee. Once my hip is all the way forward, we've got that hip extension before knee extension. All right, that is your rear foot elevated deadlift. Hope that was helpful. I'll see you in the next video.